is Amy Landau is not going to be able to join us tonight because her father had a sudden health complication. So please send along your thoughts and prayers, please. And we're going to be flying solo, so watch out. We have pretty much everything we need, although I have one or two things I wish we had that we don't. But that's okay. We're going to be able to do what we can do today. And we're still going to be able to start looking at some projects, which I'm really excited to do. Before we start the official agenda, Marco, do you want to name what you were thinking about concerning conflict of interest today?
Yes, because in my job, my daily job at Architecture EL, we're working with the City of Holyoke and specifically with Bob Parent on fire station, city annex, children's museum projects. I deal with him directly in my work, and I just feel like it may be a conflict then, being able to comment. I think I could comment objectively, but I think that there would be the appearance of a conflict of interest there. So I feel like I have to recuse myself just to be able to avoid having any appearance at all, and thus, not tainting the results of our meeting. So in those projects in which the projects that he's sponsoring, I feel like I would need to refrain from commenting on them.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing I will say is that means a lot of projects because Bob Parent is the only CPC liaison to all city projects.
Yeah, I know. Well.
However, not for long. So Bob Parent announced yesterday that he is going to be leaving the city of Holyoke within the next few months. And so that is something that we are definitely going to will have an impact on us, right? Because he has been the main person that we have worked with now for years, and his institutional knowledge is deep. So that's something that, especially because we're flying without a superintendent of DPW right now, he really stepped up into a lot of that work. So I think that it's going to behoove us to be as efficient as we can be on moving projects forward over the next 2-3 months before he makes his exit. And I did tell him yesterday how much we appreciate all that he's done for CPC. And I hope that as he sort of steps back from the amazing amount of hours he's putting in for the city, that he's able to get the rest and relaxation that he deserves and requires. All right. So let's jump into the formal agenda. Okay, so the first piece is the minutes. So number one is the review and approval of minutes from 112 and 127. Was everyone able to look at those minutes? Grab them, lift them over here. Are there any comments on, let's take the first one first, do them separately. So 112-22, are there any comments on those minutes? Okay, if that's the case, do I have here a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second. I'm sorry, I'm just having dinner. I just got home from work, so that's why I'm a little off camera at the moment.
That's all right. Welcome, Helene. Glad you're here. Okay, so a second by Marco. Any discussion or debate? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Folks can, of course, vocalize, or you can raise your hand, or you can use your reactions button down below to give a thumbs up, and I'll know you mean yes too that way. Okay, the second minutes, January 27th, 2022. have to say, Mary, that I think you do a wonderful job of really nailing the detail without it being too much. They're very detailed notes.
Yeah, Mary, that was a good job. That was a tough meeting.
Yeah.
The
Long,
27th.
it was long.
Yeah, that was a
very
tough
long.
meeting. Those were very good minutes. Good job. Good job.
Yeah.
Well
We
done.
need to,
Well, thank
we
you.
need to
Thank you
go
very much.
back to splitting it into 2 nights. That was way too much. All right. Any other comments or questions, motions for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay. The next thing has to do with the vote that we took on the video project. Mary, do you want to give a little explanation?
Yeah,
of that?
well, you know, I had made a motion on the, I think that was the meeting, the 112 meeting. And when I made the motion, I really was unaware of the fact that we can actually engage projects for under a certain amount, you know, without a lot of ado. And so I had written that motion, or I had stated the motion, just simply saying, and you'll notice it's kind of confusing in the minutes. I made the motion to allow Meg to continue investigating. The motion was seconded. There were comments about what should be in the motion, but nobody made an amendment. So it passed with the weak wording. So I'd like to remedy that with a new motion tonight saying, I move to allow the chairperson to contract a video production company to develop a video highlighting the accomplishments of the Holyoke CPA for under $5,000 or for $5,000, as long as the funds are available in our budget. Okay, so that's the motion. Hopefully that is a little bit more specific and it does allow her to go ahead.
I will second that motion.
Any discussion or debate? All in favor? Thank you. Maribel, was that a Helene? Can you? Thank you. All right, awesome. The video project is actually, it's been moving along, and it was actually fine that we had to redo the motion because we went back and forth with Louis Salazar on the terms of the contract with Lori Bellinger in purchasing. And so they will draw up the requisition forms now that we've had that vote. But we've hit a good place around the work being completed. And we will have those to look at by our April meeting, which is really exciting. So looking forward to that. Okay, so the next piece is some updates on current and past projects. So some of this is just going to move fast. It's just sort of, you know, here's the update on what's going on. So for the Chestnut Street Valley Opportunity Council project, these are the 2 buildings that are side by side on Chestnut Street. And the preservation restriction for that was sent to the Mass Historic Commission. And this is just like us learning a whole lot about PRs, right? We're a new body, we're in our 4th funding cycle. Our 3rd funding cycle was the first time that we required PRs from any applicants, because every previous applicant that was historic already had one, right? Or already had a really similar set of circumstances like the merry-go-round. And so we're learning a lot. So one of which is that we have to send PRs to Mass Historic for their approval, which we didn't understand. Right. Our understanding of the original process was that we would draft them with the city solicitor. They would go to the Historic Commission to be approved, and then it would be notarized and signed. That's not actually the case, right? They have to go to Mass Historic first for permission or for approval. And at that point, then the Historic Commission holds them, right? Sort of as the guardian of the preservation restriction. But they actually are not the ultimate arbiter in whether or not they're accepted or acceptable. So that creates some additional complication. Kathy Degnan, the city solicitor, was able to move it really quickly to Mass Historic, which was great, and follow up with them. They said that we should have public comment or comment on that within the next 30 to 60 days, which is pretty fast when you think about getting something reviewed. So I feel good about that. And once we have that, we expect to get feedback. And it might be, this looks great, wonderful, no concerns. And it might be, we would like the following things changed in order for this PR to be approved, at which point it would go back to the city solicitor and the applicant for revision. And then it would have to go back to Mass Historic, and then would be held by the Historic Commission. And I'm going through that process in a bit of a lengthy way because it's going to be really relevant to a project that we could consider voting on this time. And I'll fill you in on that when we get there. Okay, the Wayfinders Library Commons 2 project. We will need an affordable housing restriction for that. And so Kathy Degnan will work on that. The fire truck project, excitingly, has a bid, which is really cool. And they've accepted a bid. They put it out twice and didn't hear anything back. And so it was really exciting that they did get a bid from a company for the work, and they accepted that bid for the body work. So they have a bid for engine 9 for $95,000 and change for the body work. And they're still looking for a vendor who will do the chrome plating and the gold leaf lettering and striping. But at least the vast majority of the work, they've accepted a bid, and they're going to be able to move forward with that restoration. Yeah, Mike?
Madam Chairman, do we have enough money? Did the fire department allocate enough money to do the truck from fender to fender?
Yeah, it looks like it. It's actually been more an issue of finding people who will do the work, right? It's really specialized.
I just get a feeling the price is going up with supply and demand.
Well, that's a good point. We could tell the applicant to not be afraid to come back to us if it ends up that they need more. Right now they have, I think, $39,000 left to be able to do the chrome plating and the gold leaf lettering and striping. So if they end up needing more, for sure, we can tell them to come back to us.
Yeah, it would be a bad. And Madam Chairman, I spoke to this, if you recall, when the fellow from the fire department was here to give his proposal. I asked him, it's not my place to tell him what to do. It's his store. Look into getting insurance for getting the truck loaded onto the vehicle, taking it to wherever it's got to go, insuring it while it's en route and taking it off, and then having it repaired and restored, and then bringing it back on. Because if it comes back from the factory or wherever it's from, and there's a car accident, say it rolls over and the truck is damaged beyond belief. Just as a suggestion to the folks in the fire department, do you guys have in your budget an insurance policy for the shipping and the receiving of the vehicle from wherever it's got to go?
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, thanks, Mike. I can definitely bring that back to the applicant. Okay, War Memorial. As you'll remember, there was a typographical error in the contract, said 55,000 one place, 60,000 another. It also named that they had to do a sealant, which then upon Bob Parent looking at it, he did not believe the sealant should occur, was not a good idea for limestone. And so we redacted, shifted those pieces in the contract, and we all initialed in the margins to fix those contracts. Thank you, Mike Falsetti, for driving them around the city and getting people to initial them and shuttling them around. We're gonna start calling you the contract car service for hire. That was good. Sometimes you just gotta make something happen. All right, the Jackson Street first-time home buyer project, the two houses that are being built by Habitat. The affordable housing restrictions are drafted, and it's just waiting to be filed on completion. So we're making our way through all these restrictions that we needed to create with legal. For the Armour and Company project, they have a PR that was drafted, and then there were some conversations between them and the Historic Commission. And again, it's also like we're learning what this all means, right? But I think it's also really hard for a private developer to sort of understand that if you're taking funding that's connected to historic rehabilitation, that you really have to bring the building back to its historic nature. And so then for your business, you might really want to put a window here and a door there because it might make more sense for some other business choice. And yet the reality is that the funding is contingent, right? On it being brought back to its historic nature. So these are ongoing conversations. And I'm going to follow up with the applicant along with the Historic Commission. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to say, Marco. It felt like a bit of a standstill, and maybe they were going to go back to the drawing board and figure out if they could sort of walk some of their schematic changes back in order to be acceptable to Mass Historic.
I don't have any comments at this time. No.
Okay. Okay, so we had asked City Council for a request to extend for up to 2 years on 5 different projects: Merrifield, War Memorial, the Valley Opportunity Council, Chestnut Street project, the Pulaski Park study, and the Armour and Co project. And that was referred to Finance last night. So it should go to Finance. We'll likely be at the next Finance Subcommittee meeting in 2 weeks, and then we'll go back to the City Council for their approval. The MIFA Murals Contract. All right, I'm gonna show you some pictures. There's some stuff going on. So VTAC is no longer the vendor who will do the work. Instead, it will be Jeff Green through the Evergreen Restoration company that is doing the entire project. So remember, initially it was VTAC was going to do the restoration of the murals, and then this other company, Jeff Green at this other company, was going to do the installation. And instead, Jeff Green's going to take over the project as a whole. And yeah, it's sort of run into some issues. You know, Mike McManus and Don Sanders originally had talked about the project and had sort of said, yes, the City Hall ballroom will be fine over the stage. But when they went to really look at it last week, they immediately had some concerns because if you look at the back of the stage, what do you see? There's like some stuff there, some really important things, right? Like the seals for the city are there. So what does it look like to put the murals there, right? It sort of felt difficult. And so you'll also notice if you look at the ceiling, right? It's a really decorative ceiling. So they were talking about a couple options, like you could mount them on the wall somehow, right? You could come up with a temporary way to mount them on some sort of fixed surface that's then mounted to the wall. You could suspend them from the ceiling like you would a cyc in a professional theater. But of course, if you look at that ceiling, right? Bob Parent was like, I'm not drilling into that ceiling. It's a really beautiful ceiling, right? And the material in and of itself may not be able to really hold up something of that weight. We're talking about panels that are like, what, 14 by 20, right? Or 7 by 20 on both sides. So they're heavy, right? So he said, I don't feel confident about suspending it from the ceiling, and I don't want to affix it over the seals. The seals really have their place above the stage. So then it became a question of where would they be placed? And so what they're now looking at is placing them one on either side of these 2 doorways on either end of this, either side of the stage. And this is sort of a, an example of what it looks like over it. So one would go here and one would go on the other side. So effectively, just they're in a place of needing to really drill down into the details now that the work is actually sort of starting to unfold. They're going to redefine the scope of work in a meeting that they have next week so that we can come up with the contract terms. It's been hard to write the contract because of these kind of these questions that have been coming up, right? So it's hard to know how to write the contract. So we'll draft the contract terms as soon as Jeff Green and Bob Parent meet next week. And kind of can give us a better sense of exactly where the project's going to go. Any questions at this point about any of that? Yeah, Mike.
Madam Chairman, the War Memorial has got a huge ceiling and open space is open as open can be. It's almost like a Coliseum a little bit. So if you need space, the War Memorial main hall has got nothing in it, quite frankly.
Interesting.
And they've got a massive stage, and they've got a big area to hang anything you want. So if push comes to shove and you don't want to,
Yeah.
again, the Wisteria, the city hall is a historic building, and everything inside it is. War Memorial is a nice place, but it's nowhere near like the city hall. So if you're so inclined, you want to bring that up as an alternative, it may make life a little easier for everybody.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. Okay, I'm going to mention that to Bob so that they can sort of pursue that, because I do think that they might end up looking for a different location, or if it just feels like if that's a better fit, they may want to really pursue it. Okay, so the last piece is just that the city council did vote last night to accept the donations from People's Bank and East Hampton Bank in support of the Lady Liberty statue. I know that Mike's been doing a lot of work to try to pull together. You know, the bids came in higher, right, than you expected. Do you want to give an update on that, Mike? I'm still trying to hold on to the numbers.
My fellow committee members, you were gracious enough to give us the money for the study and the $60,000 to match John Velas's grant. And we thought we were all set. $110,000 is what we were told to budget for. Unfortunately, that budget figure is a year and a half old. And when when Bob Parent got the bids back to do the work, the lowest bid was $133,000. So panicking, I was able to raise $11,000 in one day. But we're about, I don't know, $12,000 short from the 133 that we need to do complete work. Right now, we can clean the statue and the base and put in the honor roll slabs on the ground, but we can't do the lighting, and we can't move the flagpole, which is a little bit of money. We can't do it. So Bob Parent indicated that they're going to award the bid to the company, I forget the name of the company, and to cover I think we now have, $121,000, something like that. But it's enough to completely do the statue and put in the honor rolls and get them and mount them. So we'll have that. What won't be done is the lighting and moving the flagpole and incidentals, if you will.
So Michael, why don't you figure out exactly how much you need and just come back and ask for it?
I do it, but I was kind of ashamed of myself and embarrassed, quite frankly. This committee is well, to put up with me, number one. Number two, I've asked you, this would be the third time I'm coming back to you with my hat in my hand.
It's a good cause, Mike.
Yeah, but after a while, just this guy never shut up. I mean, all he wants is money. You kind of feel funny after a while. But we need $12,000. Bob Parent needs $12,000. And if he gets that, other than me robbing a bank, that'll be swell. Yeah, we could use the $12,000, and Bob Parent could award the bid in total to the company. I forget the name of the company, for the $133,000. It's approximately $12,000 that we're short.
Mary, your hands up.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much to Michael. I think that's an amazing story that you were able to raise $11,000 from the two banks in a day. That's just fantastic. We really appreciate it. And I'm certainly, supporting Megan's idea that just come back with a new request. I remember when Bob Parent gave the description of what the work entailed, and he had a section that he called 3 add-ins, and it included the flag and the lighting, and I don't know what. I just knew that there was going to be a situation, there was going to be not enough money. So I think this is just fantastic what you've done so far. So let's keep going with it. And thank you.
Well, as I said, Mary and my fellow committee men, I was kind of ashamed that you'd say, this guy ever shut up? All he does is want money. This is my third time here. And I really didn't expect this, quite frankly, but if I may, or if there's money in the till after we award the bids, or I mean, excuse me, the projects that are already have been asked and have made their presentations, if there's any money in the till left, we could sure use
just have
the
to look at it now, Mike, because the reality is that this is a project that they're ready to go on now. Do you know what I mean? And if they don't have the full amount, then it just becomes sticky. And if you don't do the work now, it's going to cost double. I mean, like all these things, they seem small and you add them all up into a project, right? But then if you try to do that one thing later, it's much more expensive.
Well, yes, you're right. Well, I don't have any paperwork. I didn't submit anything. I have nothing to offer, quite frankly, because like I said, I was kind of embarrassed that I have to come back a third time and ask for more money. But if it's so inclined, and I hope it is from the rest of the committee, to award an additional, I believe it's $12,000 to the Lady Liberty to complete it, then Bob Parent could award the complete bid to the company. And Bob's got the bid. He's got all the paperwork and all that stuff. He's got all that. So
well, I would like to make a motion to extend up to $12,000 to increase the suggested award for the Lady Liberty statue.
Second.
Any further discussion or debate?
I just want to echo what's been said about that. I think it'd be a shame, particularly not to have that lighting completed. You know, it's just I think too significant of a project for the city. Mug, you've done a great job, and I think what we're going to find going forward, unfortunately, that cost of everything is going to go up, including the stuff we've got on the table. That's just the reality. But I certainly think it's worth. Let's take the vote and get it done.
thank you, John. Thank you, everybody.
Marco?
Just Mike, when you said 12,000, and if we say 12, what happens if it's like 12,300 or something? Like, I just wouldn't want to be shy by just a little bit and then have that little bit. Like, what do we do now?
Yeah, I mean,
is there a way to say the outstanding amount yet to be determined? Like, what if it's 12,500? I wouldn't want to be stuck again. That's all.
well, let me say this, Marco. That's a good point, because quite frankly, I was nervous. I would say not to exceed $15,000. If there's anything left over, it wouldn't be spent. Bob Parent would just say, here's the money. We don't need it. But for the sake of, for the error on the side of safety, I would say $15,000, which is more than needed. But I would, like you, I would prefer to have a little bit of a buffer there so we can put this baby to bed. Bob can award the bid, and it could be done in one fell swoop. So yes, Madam Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to amend that and make it not to exceed $15,000, and the balance would go back, as it normally would go back into the tills of the Boarding Preservation Committee.
Mm-hmm. Any discussion about the motion to amend?
I second the amendment.
I'll second that.
And let's vote to accept the amendment to the motion. Instead of 12, up to 15. All in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Francesca, you can give an A-OK or a thumbs up.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Like I said, I'm kind of ashamed. Like I said, this guy doesn't shut up. He just wants more and more money. The reality is, and when I did, I went to Alicia Zoller from the Community Development Office, and do you have any money? And she said, well, I can check it out. But when you go with Alicia, it's federal money, and there's a whole set of labor rates and a whole set of criteria that you have to go through in and above what we've already gone through. And I said, at this stage of the game, she said, Mike, you better go back to the Community Preservation Committee. So I tried Alicia, hoping she'd have something in her pocket. And then she said the federal requirements are so stringent that it would be, oh God, it would be awful.
Well, before we move on, we have to vote on the thing instead of the amendment to the thing. So all in favor of up to $15,000 to increase the project award for the Lady Liberty statue? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nay? No. All right. Thank you. Passes.
Thank you, everybody. You made my
Okay.
day.
So, Megan, can I just ask you, so both parts of that motion, the initial motion to do the, put it in, and then the amendment, both of those have been voted on, is that correct?
Yes, and passed
Okay.
unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, so we're moving on to budget. And I worked on this, granted, this is how I think. So you can tell I'm a school teacher and I work with teachers and I make slide decks. So I made one for the budget. So effectively the fiscal year 23 budget, right? You start with, we had $759,991 from the tax levy and the state match. And then you add to that we had some money that rolled over from the previous year, right? So we have $209,909 from the FY22 excess, right? And then you have the, 969, sorry. And then you have from that a total of 969,900. But then you have to, subtract a number of things, right? 5% immediately goes to admin, right? For expenses and for a staffer's salary. $18,000 were already set aside for small grants, and $75,999.10 is encumbered to housing for FY24, which we cannot spend this year because we don't have any housing applications. So just as a reminder, we have 3 categories: historic preservation, affordable housing, and open space and rec. We have to spend 10,000 or 10% of our budget into each year. And if you don't, then it has to be encumbered to that category for the future, right? So because we don't have any housing applications, we can't touch 75 and change of this year, which means that we have a total of $837,901.05 minus the $15K that we just put aside to Lady Liberty. So to give you a sense of where we're at, that's where we're at for this year. So folks want to write that number down, because I think that a lot of us, as we're voting for projects, right, we're doing some mental math, right? We're weighing the pros and cons of projects against each other as we're trying to figure out what we have the money to be able to do. So write down that number and then use it as we're trying to figure out where you stand, because of course we have way more asks than we have funding. So we're going to have to make some hard choices, not just based on how much we like a project, but given our restrictions and funding, what can we do as we're trying to balance our goals and also trying to get to a variety of stakeholders across the city, really, supporting all of our categories as much as we can, as well as, kind of supporting projects across multiple wards, multiple stakeholders, right? Okay. Look at the agenda. Okay, any questions on the budget? Okay. So the next piece is starting to talk through some projects, and my goal with this was that we are going to have access to our scores and start with the top ones based on that. That's what I don't have access to tonight because Amy is not here because of some family complications. So what I would like to do instead is I'd actually like to take number 6 out of order. And talk about the public letters that we've received, and also look at the survey results from the public survey. And I think that what we'll do is go back to 5 and just start with which projects everyone voted the highest. And we'll just start with sort of determining from there which ones we felt the most strong on as a group, right? If there's a project or two where we all feel like, yep, I scored them all very highly, right? Then we'll start with that project tonight, and hopefully we can at least vote on 1 or 2 projects. Okay. Let's move over to pull out the.
So can I ask a question? Just as I'm.
Yeah.
movie. So we're not, because I definitely, you know, and totally understandable if there's a family issue, but like the purpose of sending all of the information beforehand was that we could kind of have like that snapshot. And you know, I think there's people here whose perspective I'd be interested in, who might not be here, you know, so and I'm fine with that, but we're not anticipating to get through the whole list tonight.
I think we'll vote on 1 or 2 projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you need a motion to take 6 out of order?
I mean, I don't think that we need to.
Okay, fine.
Good.
Fine.
Let me pull up the public survey. All right, so the first thing I wanted to name was just that we did receive a number of letters. And does anyone want to speak to the content of those letters other than me? Not that I couldn't pontificate on and on, but I have been talking a lot. So does anyone want to name sort of what kind of letters we were receiving and what some of the content of those letters were?
Madam Chairman, well, I don't know what letters you're referring to.
Megan, you're on mute. I don't know if you know that.
I do. I'm sorry. My child was trying to come in to get something from the porch.
So,
So did no one receive the letters but me? Is that possible?
No, I received them. There were 3.
Yeah.
One was from Holyoke taxpayers. One was from an individual, and I can't remember the third one was from the
The Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. I'm gonna read I found the Jordan Hart one, which I'm gonna read into the record. So January 27, 2022, to the Community Preservation Act Committee. On behalf of the Greater Holyoke Chamber of Commerce, our Board of Directors, and our Governmental Affairs Committee, I would like to address some inaccuracies included in the New England Farm Workers Council application for CPA funding at their building located on 225 High Street. The application clearly states the Greater Holyoke Chamber has expressed interest in utilizing space in the building, which is not true. And in fact, we were completely unaware that we were written into the application until one of our board members, Blaine Florio, mentioned this to some of our board members over lunch. Additionally, as a member of the Holyoke Empowerment 2.0 committee, not once has there been discussion of utilizing the space at 225 High Street either. While we admit that we would love to see the 225 High Street property revitalized, it does not sit well with us that we, an anchoring Holyoke institution, are being mentioned as an organization that has expressed interest in the space. We do not have intention of moving from our current location at 177 High Street. We are also uneasy with a Springfield-based entity requesting the usage of money put forth by the community of Holyoke. Furthermore, after reviewing the 2020 990 form for the New England farm workers, it's clear that the organization is in a financially robust place where they should not need to utilize CPA funding for this ordeal. Our chamber has made significant efforts over the course of the year to bring our business community together and attended the Latinx business meeting orchestrated by the New England farm workers and have established relationships with many of those who attended, including the Uribe family, who we aided in putting on the Paper City Food Festival, an amazing success. We also have worked with many of them to obtain the ARPA funding and CDGB funding throughout the city. We certainly understand that we are in no business to dictate which organizations move onto our block on High Street. But we do strongly feel that including anchoring Holyoke institutions in their application as interested tenants was not an appropriate way to conduct business, nor to request CPC funding. Thank you for taking the time to read this prior to making your decision. Sincerely, Jordan Hart, Executive Director of the Greater Holyoke Chamber. Okay, any questions or comments about that while I find the next one?
I can't stop myself. Is it relevant that that same application also had like John had discovered that there was a calculation error it just kind of added on top of it, making it seem like, what? There are two things on this? It sort of didn't seem right. Maybe
I
it's
also-
minor.
Yeah, I also received a private communication from another person that was mentioned in that application, who didn't want to write a public letter, but felt it was odd they were named when they had never been contacted. And that's why I asked in the last public meeting about their letters of support, right? They had letters of support from folks in government, right? Like the Director of Economic Planning and Development, and from the State Senator, John Velas. Actually, those letters, I think, mostly came from ARPA funding when they were requesting that, which they were originally denied. Around feelings that I think were also named in the letter that we just read, around like it's a Springfield-based entity that's asking for Holyoke money. They seem like an organization that seems to actually be pretty in a financially good situation. So why are they asking for funding? Why aren't they just investing in the city if they have access to their own funding? Those were some of the reasons that I heard they were turned down for the ARPA funding. And so then they came to us. But they named people in the application that immediately then reached out to say, we did not, we don't intend to move to that building. You know, we've established ourselves other places on High Street, and we don't want to leave where we anchor ourselves. We have landlords who are good to us, or we've already kind of established where we are. So it felt odd that they had been named as like, it's such a great idea. Like I read the application initially, right? Oh, it's going to be this, you know, great kind of hub of business, and we're going to pull all these other nonprofits who are all involved in like microloans and entrepreneurship. We're going to pull together into this one building, and I thought it was a really great idea. But it's been followed up by communications from folks who have said that there's been no communication or kind of handout to try to create those partnerships. So it felt odd.
I had a bit of a different take, and I think the context of the other letter. I honestly, I felt if it happened, I wish it had been said in the public letters. But in a situation like that, I really feel like organization, you know, if it was asked about at the meeting, and it seemed like at least potentially a kind of misunderstanding, or there had been like what is happening, and it did not seem like there was any sort of like public letters were written. But I don't see that there was any like reach out to them about, hey, like that's not what we said, or you misunderstood, and to try to resolve it. And instead it just came off as like very aggressively negative in a way that felt targeted. And the other letter just especially targeted against like the nonprofits, which I think bring a lot to the city. And so anyway, I found them not collegial. I wish, you know, that if there had been some conversation about this, it could have been expressed in the letter, because otherwise it feels like it feels targeted and kind of like just very negative in a way that could have been resolved, sort of making the basically taking the worst kind of possible assumption from something that could be a misunderstanding. So that's how I felt about the tones of those letters.
Well, so I think the letters being written, you know, read into the public record, I think is important. And I think that the applicant can respond, right? They're welcome to come to our next meeting and respond to it to help us understand, or, I mean, we can't force anyone to have any conversations, right? We can only kind of take in the information that we're being provided and then make decisions based on it.
Yeah, I'm just speaking about the weight that I gave to the letters and how they came off, and that they did not come off as very compelling because of that. So that's my perspective.
Okay. John and then Mary, and I do want to read this one from the Public Taxpayers Association into the record too.
I'm just wondering if you know, the error that I pointed out, by the way, is $100,000 error, and it's in the request they presented to us, which is for the windows. So I remember Dan Kadavick said, "Oh, they'll kind of, I guess, get back to us." I wonder if we heard anything from them at all.
Yeah, we actually have, I'm gonna go in and find it. They responded and said that yes, it was an error and that they would instead decrease the number of windows that they were saying that the ask would effectively result in, but that they would not be increasing the ask to fix the error.
We got a copy of the letter, John.
Okay, thank you.
Mary, you had something else that you wanted to say?
I think probably we should just proceed with reading the letters.
Yeah.
And then do conversation or, comment.
So the second letter, January 26, 2022, from the Holyoke Taxpayers Association. The Holyoke Taxpayers Association expresses serious concern with the possibility of any nonprofit being granted Holyoke taxpayer funds from the CPAC. Some of our concerns are the following. We have not written any letter of support for any of the projects on the CPA list. Collectively, Holyoke Taxpayers Association never envisioned CPA money going to nonprofits to refurbish or rehabilitate buildings, which will be primarily used for operations and programming. We are concerned that these buildings, which have been on the tax rolls, will revert to tax exempt status prior to or after modifications are made. There is a serious conflict with using taxpayer funds to improve an asset of a nonprofit, knowing there's a strong likelihood that these entities might not be contributing to the tax base. The money CPAC has is to augment projects of permanence within the city that could not be afforded otherwise. This money should be going to parks, historic preservation like the stained glass windows, monuments such as Scott's Tower, and other historic restoration where funding is not available. That is what CPA was intended for. Are this financials for these nonprofits public information? If so, if a nonprofit seeks CPA funds, they should be required to disclose their financial condition and the salaries of their top 7 employees. Have these entities investigated traditional financing methods? 5, Holyoke has many historic preservation projects that could be addressed. Certainly, CPAC may not have additional historic preservation projects that have come in for consideration, but please keep in mind we are missing a number of department heads who would normally have who would have put together requests. Many boards and commissions are just getting back in order. The new mayor and the new HR director are currently and actively recruiting new department leadership. We request that you save funding for a project that's more appropriate and falls within the guidelines of the CPA. We understand the regulations you have concerning expenditure of the funds you have collected from the taxpayers in the city, and your due diligence is appreciated. We know your job isn't easy, and we thank you all for being on the committee. We ask that you strongly consider the concerns of the Holyoke Taxpayers Association. Thank you, Helene Florio, President and Executive Director, on behalf of the Holyoke Taxpayers Association. Yeah, so to Helene's point, there's like a whole other layer in there in that letter about just not, not liking that a lot of, these properties that are tax-paying entities and then are sold to nonprofits who then are tax exempt. I don't know if other folks have thoughts about that.
I think we should just read all 3 letters and then because they need to be in the record.
Okay. Do you remember the name of the third person?
Yes. You need to have his name on there?
No, I just need to find the letter.
Oh, do you want me to send you a text or? Oh, I can't think of it. Have you got it?
No.
Let me see if I can even find it in my pile.
I think I have 8,000 emails from Amy Lando.
No. His first name is Chris. Last name begins with an S. So what do you? Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure if I was supposed, where you publish, if I was supposed to come right out with.
Yeah, I can't find it for whatever reason. Does anyone else have it printed out that we could read into the record? Or does anyone else have access to it in their email? It was the third letter.
I think I might have it.
Okay.
Nope, I don't. I'm sorry. I don't.
Anyone else have access to it on their email or printed out?
Oh, I have it here. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay, it says, "Good morning, Amy. I was in the original commercial created by Paulo Ferrero to support the CPA. I am vice president of a local bank and active member in the business community. I was born and raised in Holyoke and own 3 properties. To say I love the city is an understatement. I took a lot of heat for promoting the CPA as a member of the business community, but remained steadfast and believe it's a great program despite being another tax. I still support it wholeheartedly. With that said, I am appalled at the gall the nonprofits have requesting funds from CPA. Nonprofits are some of the most profitable and financially strong entities in the city. They have massive amounts of cash, pay no taxes, and receive a lot of money from outside sources. While the work they do is necessary and good for the community, there are often quite a few people on the payroll making hefty salaries. I do not believe giving away CPA to those large nonprofits. The CPA funding vote was marketed as a program that provides funds to beautify the city, preserve open spaces, restore monuments, restore artwork owned by the city, etc. To use it for a nonprofit in which the executive directors make hundreds of thousands of dollars is just plain obnoxious. I hope you and the committee take these thoughts into account. I don't believe the intention of the voters in approving CPA was to provide funds for these very financially viable nonprofits. Thank you for your time. Chris Sugar. So
So we have these 3 letters. They've been read into the public record. And it was their response to the application. I think it was their way of trying to, share their voice publicly. And I think we also have the public survey to look at as well. So I want to share my screen to show you the outcome of the public survey. There were 24 responses to the survey. And I don't know if folks had a chance to look at what Amy had sent out by email. But each project, right, represented its own percentages of support, strong support, somewhat support, do not support, or green, which is not applicable, which was just, I don't know enough about this project to have an opinion or to weigh in at this point. So I hope everyone got a chance to look at it. And I think that it's something that we can return to as folks are talking about different projects. You can bring up kind of where you saw this, public support. This is one piece of the pie, right? Along with the public letters of support that folks included in their application. And also with the letters that were sent us. Were there any questions or takeaways from the public input pie charts?
Well, it seems there are a couple of them that clearly have a greater amount of public support than others.
And also it's a piece, right? It's a slice because it's 24 people, right? So it's not 2,000, it's not 1,000, right? It's 24 people. So I think also is something to keep in mind. But it's also, you know, one of our ways of doing due diligence to try to get some public opinion as we're moving into voting. Okay. So as we're you know, moving into discussing projects, I think that there's a few things I want to share about two different projects, just to give you some updates. Marco, yes?
Did the 24 include our review, or is it the public not including us?
Yep.
Including us?
No, not including us, just the
I
public.
see. Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Okay. So one of the pieces that came up in the public meeting was a question around the budget for the Miracle Playground, and whether or not it included prevailing wage. Carrie, the main applicant, and Bob Parent were able to meet and determined that the cost of the project would increase in total from $350 to $477,822. So when we're talking about the project, just keep in mind that revised number.
So they did go to the city of Holyoke and to Bob Parent, and they revised their project because they now are more informed about what things are going to cost. Is that what that's all about?
Because it's on city property, they fall under prevailing wage, and that just wasn't something that they had built into their budget, and so the costs were pretty far off, right?
I see.
So rather than it being $350, it becomes, you know, $477.8 basically. The other piece is the Girls Inc. project. So, and I spoke with Suzanne Parker this evening about this. I spoke with a few members of the Historic Commission today, and again, because of what I said earlier about mass historic and preservation restrictions, one thing that we sort of now understand is that it's not something that just you know, we and the Historic Commission can decide, oh yeah, that looks great, we're going to approve it. It's something we have to put to mass historic. And there is significant concern on members of the Historic Commission that even if we funded this project in its current state with its current schematics, that it would be rejected by mass historic, because they're arguing in the application that they are, you know, going to restore the building due to its 1860 significance. But this is what the building looked like in 1860. Right?
It doesn't look like that now.
No. Right? So the building has been like significantly changed over the eras, right? Over time. And so the conversation that I had with Suzanne Parker, the executive director of Girls Inc. This evening was, you know, go back to your architects, go back to your team and ask them, you know, what would it, you know, is there anything that would move the building to be able to be restored to its 1860 form, or to something that holds on to these iconic, the iconic look of that building of that time, that would be approved by mass historic, because in its current form, they felt like even if we approved funding towards the building, we would go through a lot of effort and we would draft the PR and send it to mass historic and it would be rejected. And then the funding would go nowhere. So, big bummer. Yeah, Michael.
Megan, just to go, Madam Chairman, Bob Parent, if I get this correctly, Bob Parent said that was the 1860 picture of what it ought to look like now, should they accept the funding from us. Am I understanding you correctly?
The conversation was with the Historic Commission. around what does it look like to send applications to Mass Historic, and what is the likelihood that something would be approved by Mass Historic or not? So, if I
Is
don't
it
know.
based on that picture? Is it based on that picture you showed?
Yeah, and that was the picture they had in their application of the original building.
Oh, God.
And so they felt like if we're sending this application along with the PR to Mass Historic, it would be rejected.
Wow. Wow.
So I just wanted to share that, and so their thinking is that they're going to. Yes. Their thinking is that they will talk with their team and then hopefully have a response for us in our March meeting. Marco, did you want to add?
Well, I did pull up a street view photo of what it looks like today, or maybe last year or something. I don't know if you want to. I can share it, or if you want to share it. But and then I hesitated because I guess I need to have more information on the actual application. If they're going to restore the building today to look like that, they've got a lot of work to do, and maybe I didn't understand, exactly what they were going to do on the front of the building. We saw that nice new entrance. That's on the courtyard side of the building, not really visible from the public way. But is that right? Like they said they were going to restore today's building to look like that older photo, that period photo?
No, but I think it's just that, and I think that, I was working on a flow chart. It's not ready yet, but for a historic project comes for CPC, what's the workflow? And effectively, I think that flow has to look really different than other projects, right? In terms of are you going to need a preservation restriction? Great. So the first thing that you have to do is go to the Historic Commission, and you have to pitch not just looking for, is this historically significant or was it one point, but what are the current schematics of your project in comparison with this historic significance? And does your project align with that, so that we could get Mass Historic to agree to your project? Because I guess what Mass Historic doesn't want is you saying a building has historic significance, but then you're really not restoring it to what it was like when it had that significance. You're sort of restoring it to this I don't know a good word for it, but a form of 1956, right? But you're saying it's really historically significant because of 1860, but really you're bringing it back to its glory days of 1956.
Yeah, because I know that building had some there's some phosphorescence that's on the front, which I think is from the salt that they lay on the sidewalk, soaking up the brick facade. But the way it looks today is barely recognizable compared to the building that's there. There was a tower on the building, it's gone. There's all that crenellation across the top, it's gone. The windows are different. I guess maybe I forgot what the application included, but it'd be great if they could restore it to what it looked like back in that 60s photograph. But the way it looks today is barely a shadow of what it looked. And if that's not what they're going to do, then I don't know.
Then the project won't be eligible.
Yeah.
Effectively. Okay. Yeah.
Do you want me to flash that image I have? I could share for a second if you want. Only if you can you put that other image on for a moment? And then we'll do the before and after, if you like.
Sure.
Let's see, where do I? All right, so you see how there's a tower up in the distance there, and then that crenellation goes all the way up the gabled end and across the part to the left. And there's lots of brickwork. All right. If you want, I'll share the street view now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it here. Is it letting me? Oh, it says it hosts disabled participant screening or sharing. Let me try again.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead. I fix it.
he has to be enabled.
So today, all that trim work that was like, you can see some of the sort of crenellation, but it's not over there to the left. The windows are all different. The windows in the old photo had like nice like lintels above it, and I guess there's a little bit of trim work. Like, yeah, like this down here, like this lower part, I think was repeated all up in here before. I can stop sharing, but I just wanted to make sure people, saw what it looks like today, because it's not like in that photo.
Well, they're gonna go back to their team and we'll have to talk about it, right? And then they'll come back to our March meeting and give us an update. But for that reason in particular, I think that we should table any discussion of that project tonight, just waiting for more information from them before we figure out if they have sort of an answer that they think with the historic rehabilitation of the building, or they'll withdraw the application. Okay. All right. So I really wish that I had access to the Google scores. We've kept them hidden from everyone, including me, because of public meeting law. But as a result, when Amy suddenly had to go support her family, she didn't give me access to it yet. So I don't have access to it now. But I do think that it's possible that there is one or two projects that were really highly scored by the vast majority of us. And so, and if that's not the case, then we won't go there tonight. We won't talk about any projects. But if there is a project or two where we know that we all scored them really high, then it's possible we could at least start with those that are the most popular or least controversial. Is there a project that folks know they scored all the way down for force down the line?
How about take up something like Glutok Woods Trail Improvements? I think that's a pretty low-lying fruit we can probably take care of quickly.
Were other folks also in agreement that they scored that as 4s all the way down? I did.
Yeah. All set.
Okay, so that was my thinking, was that there would be one or two projects that we could start with. Okay, so let's start with Glutok Woods Trail Improvements. This is from the Conservation Commission. It's a city project, and it's an extension of work into an area of land, a parcel that was acquired using CPA funding. It's for $47,000. I'm gonna pull up the application really quick, just so I can read a little bit more information into the record. Is there anyone who wants to speak to why they scored it 4s all the way down?
Well, I was very impressed, number one, with the presentation. I think they're doing a great job trying to keep that beautiful open area clear, all the debris they cleaned out, stuff like that. I think they're on top of things. They did some postings as far as letting folks know it's a trail. And I think at the end of their presentation, there's some talk about making it even a little more accessible to those who have maybe some physical challenges. So I think overall, it's just a case of where we've got a beautiful kind of a trail out there. And this is an opportunity to make sure we keep it up to kind of a top-notch condition. And, even I think, kind of blocking it off for the dirt bikes is certainly much needed. So I just think everything about it, I was very much impressed.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think both of Yoni's presentations, but this one in particular is just incredibly cost efficient, like very, really getting the bang for the buck, just in terms of really focusing on what's necessary, talking about we could get the wood chips from DPW. I mean, just really thinking about how to maximize the resources of the city and use these funds well. So, I felt that was really positive and great to see. And that the plan is for the funds also to be put back into the community for youth to work on this as a great opportunity for summer work, to be out and and that, you know, it comes back into the community, those funds in terms of young people. So, and then I agree with all the things that John also said.
In the application, it reads, the Glavtech Woods acquisition and conservation restriction was completed by the city and Kestrel Land Trust in 2020. The property came in with an extensive trail network, but baseline documentation and feedback from visitors showed there were many more opportunities to improve the trail system. And so the improvement opportunities include constructing bog bridges to aid crossing over sensitive wetland areas, some general invasive species removal near trails, and really crafting a series of trails to make it just a really great addition to our parks and rec spaces. And I agree that for me, the thing that just makes it Fords all the way down is that they are using a crew of Holyoke youth, right? And so it's people having summer jobs, right? It's good work. And it's also just, it's good work, right? It's like you're doing good for your community while you're being paid to do it. So I really love that aspect of the application. Marco, you doing it?
Yeah, I like the idea that it builds upon a resource that we just recently acquired. So it adds value to something that, you know, is already there and makes it even better. So it seems to be in line with what our goals are.
Mary?
So I thank everyone for their comments. I totally agree that this is a really cost-efficient program. I think that the city is going to get, you know, a huge amount back for its CPA dollars. And it sounds like most of the CPA members here are supporting it. So can I go ahead and make a motion that this project be funded? Is it too early to do that, or can I make that?
No.
The thing is,
Make a motion and just name the dollar amount. It's 47,000.
Okay.
I
So
second
I
it.
move.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I thought you already made the motion. Excuse me.
All right. Fine. So I guess the motion is to fund the GluTAC Trails project for 47,000. It's been seconded by Marco. Okay.
All right, any further debate or discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, unanimous. Nicely done. I'm really excited about this project. Very excited. We're gonna do a CPC spring hike, right?
Yes.
Or summer hike when it's
idea.
done.
Yeah.
Walk it.
That'll be fun.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been there many times. It's really quite beautiful. There's
Mike. Sorry, I thought you were done, Mary.
done. I'm done.
Madam Chairman, for another project that I liked very much and scored very high was the City Hall stained glass restoration. We've funded it for the last 2 years. It's a work in progress. It's a great work in progress. And Bob Parent, once again, should be commented and praised for his work. So I'd like to continue that work. It hits all the buttons of what the CPA ought to be and ought to do. So I'd like to make a recommendation that we fund the City Hall stained glass restoration phase 4 for $160,000 as described in the proposal.
Okay, let me pull up their application. Was this another, before we get too deep into debate, was this a project that was highly scored by most folks? Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm seeing some nodding heads. So
Yeah, I did all fours. Is that maximum? You know, the best score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was close. I think I had almost all 4s there. So this project is for
Two windows.
$160,000. But in the application, when I opened it, it doesn't say 160, it says 80.
Well,
Oh, I see. It says CPA request is $80,000, 100% if MHC funding is not received. But I know that they're planning to put it forward for MHC. Or did Bob in the presentation say that they had been told not to go to MHC this round? Am I remembering that correctly now? Mary, you're nodding. Do you remember?
Yes, I know it's in the minutes. I'm just trying to remember exactly how it was stated, but he said that the person from Mass Historic Society said that he highly doubted that Mass Historic was going to fund it this year because they were backing away from stained glass windows, but that it wasn't a final no. In other words, he made that statement, but then he did not clarify that it was a final no from Mass Historic. He said they were still going to apply to them, but he said it was unlikely. So I don't know where that leaves us in terms of the sum that they're applying for.
I mean, we can always say up to 160 if they don't receive MHC funding.
Madam Chairman, certainly if they receive additional fundings, Bob will simply delete $80,000 from and return it to Amy.
Or use it for other windows, right? That need to be.
But he's going to have, right? No, Madam Chairman, he may do that, but he's going to have to put it into a new proposal. I'm referring to this particular proposal in front of us for $160,000, and that's for 2 windows. And I think it's based upon not getting it. Should he get it? Certainly, knowing Bob, he'll return the 80 back to Amy. So to err on the side of caution, I'd like to fund it for the full 160, and if it's less, beautiful.
Okay. Any other? Mike, you said that like it was a motion, but I don't know if you really named it as such.
Well, Madam Chairman, I'd like to propose that we pass the City Hall stained glass window restoration project for $160,000 as described by Bob Parrott and presented at the last meeting, and also is in the minutes of the last meeting. Like I said, we've always funded this, and this is another step closer to doing the whole City Hall. Eventually we'll get there, but this is just one step, another step on the journey. So I think it meets all the buttons and criteria for the CPA. And it's a good, feel-good project for the city, seeing these stained glass windows restored to their former brilliance.
Do I hear a second?
Can I ask a question again, kind of?
Yeah.
The thing, like, is there a way to use what we're doing? I mean, I know that we respond to money getting leveraged. I don't know if anyone responds to us getting leveraged. But would that be to the state fund? Would that be compelling if it's, well, our CPA has funded it at this amount? And so if you give us 80, a project for 160 can be completed. I have no idea if that, would be at all useful or helpful. And I think it probably would be helpful to draw as much out of Holyoke, out of, state money in as possible. And so I guess I'm just not sure if that was sort of like,
yes. So
part of the context I wasn't understanding during the presentation that could be done. But that I guess I'm a little worried that if we say, okay, we're gonna fund this for 160, if that would, the state knows that, would be like, yeah, so we're gonna pass on this, it's getting funded. I don't, would they know that? Those are questions I don't have, but I guess I'm just wondering, just in terms of not to support it, but just like, is there a way to structure this so we're maximizing their ability to pull in other funds for the project?
Yeah. So for example, we could instead say, nope, we're gonna give you 80,000. That's it. Go to MHC and tell us what you can get. And if you get nothing, come back to us. Right. So, and this is a project that's been leveraged a couple times, right? So the last 2 times through, it's been a 50-50 match, right? So what we've put in, the state has also matched. And I think what Bob was trying to say in the last presentation is like, we're gonna run out of that. Like eventually the state's gonna be like, you've come back to us for this project too many times. We're not gonna match you anymore. So I think that's what Bob was trying to indicate is like, I'll go back to MHC again to kind of continue this 50-50 match thing that we've been doing, but feels like we're probably gonna be running out of our luck here. So like maybe we'll get it one more time, but probably not. Yes, John?
Yeah, I mean, I support this restoration project for sure, but my thoughts are, I guess, exactly that I would be comfortable going with 80,000 and see if they could leverage it. And as you said, Megan, if not, come back to us. But I think by just giving the full 160 right away, that kind of limits the ability to try to get some leverage in other sources.
Yep.
I mean, I would make a motion that we fund up to $80,000 for the windows restoration project.
Do I hear a second?
I second that.
Any discussion or debate? As we're voting on projects, I'm gonna keep putting the current tally in the chat of how much is left. So we have 775,901.05 right now. Are we ready to move to a vote? Yeah. Okay. All in favor of $80,000 towards the sustained cost project?
Aye.
Well, I have to say, yeah, I prefer double that amount, but if the will of the committee is 80, then 80 it will be.
Okay. So unanimous with one abstaining, Marco. And totally, I think, Mike, the other piece that we can say to Bob Parent in our communications to him is let us know how it goes with Mass Historic. And, you know, if we have money left at the end of the funding cycle, come back to us. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we, I'm wondering if the Scott Tower Anniversary Hill Park Phase 2, it was also highly scored by others?
It was the highest scoring by far in terms of public support.
It was wild, actually. Yeah, I was impressed by that. It was like 97% of people were like, yes.
I think it was
So
the
that was
only
interesting.
one. I think it was the only one with no negative, which was kind of interesting.
I scored it as 4s all the way down. This is a $30,000 ask. Let me find the application so that I can read a little bit into the record of what this project is, just to refresh people's memories. So it's to develop the initial park design concept to a level of 25% schematic completion and the commission of a site planning survey of the property. These activities will prepare the city to solicit bids for final design work, construction documents, permitting, and construction management. So we are ready to begin the next phase. This project would be done by November of this year.
So moved.
Any discussion or debate on the project? Does anyone want to speak in favor of it?
Well, I actually had a question. Is this one of Bob Parent's projects? I kind of lost track.
So Yoni Glaugauer is the applicant.
Got it.
And is the person shepherding the project as the department head of conservation. Okay.
So Marco, at this point, it seems like Bob Parent is named in almost all of them as the city sort of go-to person. So how will that influence your feelings on whether it's conflict?
Well, I just don't want
to. In this case, Yoni did all the, the work on it and produced it, but I'm sure at some point he must have asked Bob because it's still a city property. So
Well,
Grab
I would
signs
rather,
off on all of the city properties, because one of the things that we found in the past is that sometimes someone might be the department head of something, but not really understand procurement, right?
I
Or
see.
really not understand the nuances of getting a city project done, like prevailing wage. And so like the mayor has to appoint someone now on a form to be the liaison who will double check to make sure everyone's numbers are correct and that processes and routines are being followed. And Bob is that person.
So rather than
But
risk
he's not an
tainting,
applicant.
I would abstain. But if the general thinking is that there's not a conflict, then I'll do whatever.
I don't
It
think
just
it's a
occurred to
conflict
me.
only in that he's only involved if the project gets funded.
Okay. All right. Well, if I can vote, I would certainly vote. I just didn't want to do something that came back later on to be a problem.
I appreciate that.
It
Okay.
does make it, I don't, well, it seems like it may not make a difference to your vote.
That's true. Okay. I will say that the nice piece about this, again, to speak to what someone said in a former project with Glutak, that this is a project that's sort of like a next phase for us, right? Like we last year acquired a number of acres north of Scott Tower to prevent it from being developed and to create the real possibility of this being renovated into a more cohesive, usable, accessible park space, because now there's going to be the capacity for potentially a northern entrance to the area, right? And to be able to sort of use that. I will say too that this is gearing up for a number of asks that are going to come our way, right? Like I have no doubt we will be asked in a year or two to support then the creation of this trail system, right? And the renovation then maybe a year or two after that of Scott's Tower itself, right? So this is sort of like staging out like a multi-year, you know, over the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a series of asks on this property. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, anyone else want to speak to this project?
Just to say, I mean, I think that's, you know, that's great. And it just feels like such like good organization. Like there's a real plan here. And I think sometimes looking through these, there's so many pieces and then people sort of are like looking through them, but to be able to organize and say, okay, this is, you know, these other things are happening, but we can secure this and move on. And I also know, I mean, you know, being the parks person, being kind of the parks like sort of liaison to this particular project, that Yoni is looking at all sorts of different kinds of sources of bringing in money. And it seems like there are some that would be very targeted that we could bring outside. So while, you know, I hope the CPA funds are part of it, I do feel like there's also a bigger plan to draw down other funds and to be really creative. You know, that there's some support just for maintaining wooded, like forested spaces in urban areas. So like, that's perfect. So, you know, that just gives me even more, I mean, I know I'm like preaching to the choir probably at the moment, but that gives me more confidence about taking on this piece and then, you know, moving on, that there's like a real kind of vision and organization behind it. And I guess I would move to vote to approve it, and I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know the ask amount. I feel
$30,000 for the Scott Tower Anniversary Hill Park Phase 2 from the Conservation Commission.
I might be mistaken, but I thought Mike Falsetti moved to do that, and there was not a second. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, then I apologize.
So Helene, do you want to be okay?
Okay. All in favor? Maribel, I just didn't see you. Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm just picking myself up on the math for a second. Okay, so we are now at $665,901.05. Okay. I mean, it might be too much to ask, but let's see if there's one more project. And if not, that's okay, right? Because I think we're probably going to start hitting now some stickiness, right? Around, oh, I really want this project, but I can't afford this one, but also this one, right? But I'm wondering if there's one more project that was highly rated by the vast majority of people. And if not, that's okay. We can stop here and then we can resume in the next meeting. John, did you have your hand up?
I was gonna just throw to the group, how did the Hearst project score, the painting?
I had it as all 3s and 4s.
I had it as I gave it 27, which meant I gave it all 4s except for 1, 3. So maybe we should ask, does anyone have another 28 that they want to bring up? You know, in other words, they got all 4s.
No.
Okay, then how about 27s?
Yeah, Hearst was the next one, although I also had really highly scored the Miracle League playground. But I also know that I have all these questions about it, more about like, so their ask initially was for $350, but now that the cost has gone up to $477, I'm just trying to figure out like how that would affect their ask to us effectively. Like, do they think they could fundraise the difference? Right. And so the ask would stay the same and the playground could still occur, or are they really asking for an expanded ask? So that's something that I think I'd like them to come in and talk to us about.
I think that's fair. They raised 100,000 on their own, which for not being a staffed organization seems very impressive.
Yeah.
Like from
I think a big chunk of that came from Rotary, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, so because I think Helene, I'm kind of in agreement. Their grassroots, but I really think they've got to start getting out doing some fundraising, because it's a project. I think a lot of even businesses and corporations that have charitable wings to them, like Michael did with Lady Liberty, who support something like that. So I think that number could get down quite a bit under what they're looking for from us, and we could support it somehow. But the full amount to me, you know, it's just, I'm not comfortable doing that. I think they got a lot more fundraising and try to get some more corporate money out behind it.
I mean, I'm definitely comfortable with us getting, just because that is obviously a big difference. One thing though that was really compelling to me though is, I mean, that's what it costs, right? Because it's on a city park, but that's also why it's such an awesome project, because it is not on someone else's property. It's, you know, it really is going to be accessible to all the kids in this city, and you know, there's not times where they can't use it and that sort of thing. So, you know, I guess that will be that added cost, but it also to me has it's not necessarily a bad thing because of how great it is that it's going to be so accessible in all ways. But I think that getting that clarification of what they're thinking, and if they, you know, if that then reorients them to, okay, what else can we do? Just, I think that seems fair rather than, I just don't think we have enough information, but I say that without at all besmirching, because they were extremely high. We, you know, the parks obviously really is excited about this as a project.
Yes, I love the idea that I love the location. I think you're right. Like it increases the cost of the project, but her point that having it next to this other playground makes it so accessible for families, right? Like her point, of course, like most families, like if they have a child that's disabled, they're also have other able-bodied children. And so like it creates this great play space where it just is welcoming for everybody. So I love that idea. I think the concept is great. And I just have questions around how much, you know, the ask really will be, so that we can just understand what they need. And also like, how much do they think they can fundraise and sort of I mean, I think they could go on, you know, GoFundMe. I think they would make a lot of money being able to try to fundraise for this. I think individual people would be interested in giving.
Can I ask a question? I don't mean, Glenn, if you know if the answer to this or not, but assuming the park is established there, who would maintain that over the years? Would that be something the Parks and Rec would be responsible for? Or is it something that some group that is kind of promoting this would be responsible for? Because at some point in time, like, all the playgrounds, there's
Yeah.
painting and maintenance and repairs.
Yeah. I mean, I think because it's on our property, and there's not that, I mean, I think that the ask is to create this, but I think it would be under parks, and that has the positive and the negative, and the positive being that it is accessible. And if something needs to change in the future to be responsive to the community, it's a community resource, so we could do that. But then there's also that added maintenance issue, and certainly there's some areas where we're realizing, that really awesome things we have need to be maintained. And so, that's something that I genuinely hope that the next parks director takes on, and we're in the process of finding somebody, hopefully with like a vision of that kind of long-term thinking. Yeah. So that's my understanding, but if I'm wrong, I think we could get a more specific answer, but I think this is just kind of, we're going to establish this here.
I mean, I would like to know, at the end of the day, who actually owns the equipment, what the plans are for maintenance, et cetera. Then you got the whole issue of insurance and liability, God forbid, if someone is hurt. So if it becomes the ownership of the city of Hoyoke, would fall under obviously the city's, insurance blanket, et cetera. But if it remains kind of the, because I'm not a lawyer, that gets tricky because you've got city-owned land and you may have equipment, that is not city-owned. So I just like to have those questions clarified as part of this process.
But I mean, I think
again, I'm supportive. I just want to make sure we don't.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. But I mean, I think that part of the contracting would be that it would belong to the city, because it's it's not going to belong to someone else. You can just pick it up and walk away with it.
No, I mean that's probably the easiest way to do it. But I like to have that.
Yeah. So I think
clarified.
that would yeah. And my sense was that's the purpose. I mean, again, like there's probably ways to make this cheaper and have it on some private land and have it kind of a bit less accessible, but it seems like that's part of their mission is to really just break down those barriers, which is great, but doing good work can be more complicated, and maybe you need more to go through the process. So I think they're totally fair questions and really thoughtful. But I think that especially with that change in the amount, it would be great to get just additional info from them. So.
Okay, so I just went through an email that Carrie just sent me, and the 477,822 is the revised budget, including the prevailing wage. The original budget was 439,426. So it's actually only an increase in the total budget by $38,000 and change for it to be moved to prevailing wage. So if we absorbed that budgetary difference into the ask, we would be giving them, instead of 350, we'd be giving them 388 and change.
Madam Chairman, what happened? I thought it was $477,000.
But remember, they've already raised 100,000. I looked back in, they got $30,000 from the Rotary, and they have 70,000 from a variety of other private sources.
No, that's fine, beautiful. But
yeah.
I just thought when the slide that you showed, it said, I thought in my mind they were looking for $477,000.
No, so I was trying to figure out exactly what the difference would be, right? So the only difference in the ask, because they've already raised 100,000, right? So the difference would be $38,396.
So
and to give any, so if we ended up doing the full ask plus that difference, that would leave us $307,000 left.
What is the budget for the what is the revised budget for the Miracle League playground, just so I can write it down? The final.
477,822.
No, what do they want from us?
If we absorbed the ask, it would be 388,396.
So for 389,000, they're looking for 389,000 from us.
If we're going to meet the entire gap, we can choose not to and still fund the project, right? We can say we'll fund the 350 and expect you to match and find the other 38.
That's fine. I just want to have a starting point. Right now, it's $388,000. Would that be correct? Okay.
Right, to fully fund the project.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So, you know, for example, we've sort of been talking about these two projects, that plus Wisteria Hearst, which is 125. If we did both, we would have $182,000 left. I'm just giving the totals because as you start like funding down, right now you're like, oh, well, then we couldn't do this, but maybe we could do, right? Then you're making choices around like what you could fund, right? And that it's fine, right? That's where we're at.
Well, we still have the Grills Incorporated for 100.5. That's kind of up in the air.
We do. Yep. So if we funded both the Miracle League playground to its total ask, which we don't need to do, I think we could also not do that, right? Like I do think that they could potentially raise more money, right? Especially if they were so close to that funding, right? But if we did fund that plus Wisteria Hearst, we would still have $182,000 left.
Maybe that's something to think about. And we come back, we might have a little more info from them, and and they may have some other information. And then also after we know what we've already committed, I feel like I maybe want to look over everything again, and that might make certain things feel more attractive. And does that make sense? I feel like things we did totally were not controversial, which is great to have these amazing projects. So
yeah,
I would like to get a little more information from them again. I think we're all very much kind of impressed with what they're trying to get done, but I just think I'd like to get a little bit more from them, particularly around if they have any plans maybe for raising some funds, so we could maybe lower the expectation from us for the looking for, because if we voted on this, it's a huge chunk tonight. It's a huge chunk what we have. I would rather, I'm just going to propose, I'd rather shift something a little bit less expensive right now. Maybe finish tonight with Hearst and, you know, go from there. That's a lot less money that we're committing to, and they've got other, you know, they got other funds. They're just kind of leveraging what we're going to give to paint those buildings.
Yeah, I think the same thing too. I agree.
Mike?
Maybe bringing them back too to speak to them and see like if they could come up with better ideas to raise money. So that's a lot of money too.
Yeah,
it is a lot. So I'm hearing that we should definitely invite in the applicant again from the Miracle Playground next time. So we just ask them questions, especially around that gap, on what extent they are asking for us to cover it versus they can fundraise. I also heard John, I don't know if it was a recommendation or a motion to take up Wisteria Hearst. Is there any appetite for that conversation, or do folks want to end here for the night? Michael?
Madam Chairman, I was going to make a recommendation to fund the repainting of the Hysteria Hearst Museum for $125,000. It's sorely needed. The building's kind of in somewhat drab shape, and there is problems with the damage to the chimney, water damage to the chimney, to the base of the foundation. As we all know, maintenance problems don't heal themselves. They only get worse over time. and they only get more expensive over time. So that being said, I'd like to make a motion to fully fund the repainting and the repair work on the exterior of Hysteria Museum for $125,000.
Second.
I'll second that motion.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, let me find the application. The City of Holyoke is requesting funds to repaint and repair the exteriors of the main and carriage house of Wisteria Hearst. Wisteria Hearst is a municipally owned historic site, cultural institution, and archive. The scope of the work includes repainting the exterior, repairing attached exterior structures, and repointing the chimneys, foundation, and other brick structures, with work to be completed by November of 2022. All right, it's open for debate or discussion. How do we feel about this project?
From personal experience, painting just keeps getting more expensive. So I like to say that. Every time I get a quote, it goes up. So it seems like a good opportunity to get it done. And I was really impressed just with I mean, I'm impressed with them, seeing all the program they're doing, but the diversity of letters they had of support, just such a utilized community resource. So it just seems like yeah, I'm very supportive. So,
Yeah, I think its institution in general has done a lot of work to be culturally responsive and relevant. I think their series the last few weeks around uncovering, stories of Black Holyoke has been really just poignant and important. And I know this is a project that we have supported in the past. We've supported them with electrical repair. And in that case, it came way underneath, right? We initially had given them $104,000 and they were able to do it in 25 and returned the rest of the money to the general fund. So I know they're good for it, right? They do good work. And I know that if they end up somehow being able to do this work in less, then, the funding will be returned to us. Marco, your hands up.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that, it is a city institution. I think that this ask is timely because it'll be queued up for work that happens this summer and this fall. We know it'll be done. And like you said, they've already proven in the past to be, a worthwhile cause. And it seems like, this is just in line with more of the, maintaining a good thing. So I'm in favor.
All right. Anyone else who wants to speak? Okay, let's move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Well, I will say that we did some good work today.
Madam Chairman, would you quickly, if you could quickly, approximately how much do we spend tonight?
Yeah, let me go back and do the last time we were at 695,901 and 5 cents minus 125.
297.
What'd you say?
297.
That's what we spent, John?
I'm pretty sure. Let's see, 155.
Oh yeah, I wasn't calculating that. I was calculating how much we had left. So what we have left after tonight is in the chat, 570,901.05.
Madam Chairman, what was that again for a balance we have?
$570,901.05.
Okay.
One thing that I want to make a motion on before we adjourn is I would like to make a motion to allow the contract subcommittee to meet before the next meeting to determine conditions, the terms and conditions for these 4 projects, Wisteria Hearst, stained glass windows, Scott Tower, and Blue Tack Woods. to bring to the next meeting for your approval.
Yeah, give me just for the number, I have 297 is what we spent tonight.
Okay.
That includes the 15,000 for Lady Liberty.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that motion? Largely it's because I don't want to have to do it now in committee. Otherwise we have to wait until the next meeting to do the terms and conditions. And
Yeah,
that slows
I'll
things
second
down. All in favor, or just
No, wait, no, can I ask a question first? Wait, can I ask a question?
Yep, I'm stopping.
Okay, so I was going to ask that we send the ones that we approved tonight in a chunk to the city council for their approval.
We can't
How
until we
would
have
that
terms and conditions.
Oh, okay. So you can't do it. That's the reason why you were asking about. So that's why I thought it should be brought up right now. So you have to have the contract conditions before you do that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, if you, I know that your concern is the blue tack project, right?
Yes.
Okay. Give me a second. Let me show you what I'm talking about, and maybe we can do glue tack together and then reserve the others for the contract subcommittees. So effectively, you know, a tout, it looks like this, right? So we would fill out the project name, and the scope of the work would be taken from the contract, from the application and placed here. Restrictions. Must the applicant collaboratively develop and execute a restriction? If yes, mark which one. In this case, I'm guessing the answer is no, because there's already a CR on Anniversary Hill. Do you know if that's true, Mary?
There is, but I'm going to ask Yoni to go on, and so maybe he can clarify some of that. But yes, there is.
Okay. So then the answer would be, there's already, I'm gonna end this right through. There's already a CR on, and then completion of work by what date, by any other benchmarks. So for example, the application, let me find that. Space and rec, go check. No, sorry, this is Anniversary. No, I was confusing the two open space and rec projects. So this information would get copied in from here, along often with some information from down below, right from here. And then we also have to put in the deadlines.
I think you have the Anniversary one up, not the glue tack one up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, I was confusing the two. So then this information would be sent, right? Like here's the timeline of it. So one thing that we were talking about, Amy and I, is that effectively, like we set our parameters, right, for what deadlines we give, right? And so one thing that we've ended up doing, we're setting really tight deadlines that we're constantly then revising.
Okay.
Having to go back to the city council for. So I think that what I would like us to do, with your permission, is to instead draft contract terms differently so that we have the capacity to grant extensions versus these hard deadlines, which force us to continually go back to the council.
Yeah, okay, I see the point.
Because it's slow and it's onerous to have to keep going back and doing it. And it's not for, there are projects for whom we would say, you know what, we gave you a year and we don't encumber the funding anymore. We want to use it for another project, and that's okay. We're not going to extend the deadline, right? But that we would have the capacity to handle that in-house versus given them, a very tight deadline. So in the past, like this application says that they're going to be done in November of 2022, and we would have named November 2022 as the deadline, with one possible 6-month extension from the committee or a 3-month extension from the committee, and after that you have to go to the city council. And what we find is those deadlines were just too tight, right? Like one thing happens with your engineer isn't available to start a project on time, or something happens and suddenly you're going back to city council and having to rehash the whole thing. So I would like to be able to shift to a model instead where we might set a deadline, but we give ourselves the capacity to make the shots and, you know, to call the shots on those deadline extensions.
And this would be the work of the contract subcommittee? Is that why you're putting it in that sort of in that order?
So yes, right. But also I think the group as a whole would have to vote on any extensions. But just in terms of us drafting contracts in the future, I would prefer to stay away from those hard and fast deadlines, which lock us into continually going back to city council.
I think it's a good point, Meg, because what we're finding out is, you know, due to the effects of COVID, a lot of times there's delays in getting contractors to do work, and also there's a lot of supplies and materials that you just can't get. So I think be a little bit more generous on the time frame and a little more flexible will go a long way, because it's going to take a while before we get, you know, I mean, just go the, you know, we're hearing that a lot of projects at the planning board, you know.
The fire truck,
extending
they
stuff,
said,
yeah.
oh yeah, a year.
Yeah.
We
You
only
know,
need a year.
it's materials and it's workmanship. They just, you know, everything's backed up where you can't get it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, if we had originally given the fire truck the tight deadline they asked for, we would be going back to city council right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Because they put it out to bid twice, didn't hear back from anybody. They finally have a bid, right? And it's moving forward. Everything is like this now.
Yeah.
And I don't see it really shifting anytime soon.
No.
So, you know, the work here, Yoni, the work for Anniversary Hill, in terms of deadlines, what are you thinking in terms of how long the work will take to do?
It should only take 7 weeks once we actually get the contractor and get the crew out there to do it. Seasonality is kind of important though. I think ideally it would happen this July and August. That was the, you know, that's the vision and the hope, depending on the timing. But if it couldn't happen, then we might be looking at, you know, next July or August or sometime in the fall. You don't want to do that work in the spring when things are wet, or the early fall.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, right? And so that's the kind of piece where, you know, yes, it looks like the project should be done by August, but I'd be comfortable giving until the following October, just in case something happens and then it moves to the next summer.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that something that we can agree to for conditions? So like October of the following year? Okay. Let me write that down before I forget what I just said. So that would be October of 23, yes? I'm getting my years right. Okay. So then and there's already a conservation restriction on the land, Yoni?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. And okay, so then pretty simply, it doesn't require a CR because it already has one. The completion of work would be by October of 2023, with the possibility of an extension, you know, internal to CPC. If something happened and you had to come back and talk to us, then we could vote about that. And an official report is due within 30 days of project completion, including written and visual project documentation. You have to cover the cost for and agree to display an approved CPA sign. So pretty standard. Are there any other terms and conditions you think would be important, Yoni?
I have a question about the signage. We're going to be hopefully constructing a kiosk for the park as part of the project activities. So could like the map and whatever is in the kiosk also include this was funded by CPA project? Would that be an acceptable signage?
Yeah.
It just has to be permanent in nature. Whatever that looks like, if it's a plaque that's on the kiosk, or it just has to be permanent in nature.
Okay, we can get creative.
Yeah, Yoni, that's a good idea. Save you a couple of bucks. Put it all in the same.
So that works for that project. There are other projects that are more complicated. It helps if there's already a CR in the land. Okay. So the remaining projects, if we could discuss that in a contract subcommittee, that would be great. And then we can move all of them as a batch to city council for their next meeting. The process is that we batch it to them, we give them the projects, and then we see what they do with it, right? City council can vote to approve, to decrease the funding for something, but approve it, or to deny it. Right. Those are their three options whenever we give them a suggestion for funding. They can choose to vote on it right on the floor in the city council meeting in which it's laid on the table, or it can be pushed to a subcommittee and taken up there and then voted on there if they want to approve the suggested amount or lower it or reject it and bring it to city council from there. And so sometimes it can move pretty quickly and sometimes it does not. Right. And you just have to be patient and I'll let you know how it goes. And congratulations, by the way, to our two new members, Francesca and Maribel, for surviving the long process of getting on the CPC officially.
Yeah. Thank you. It took a whole long time.
Yes, it did. And you put up with some very sassy city councilors.
Well, welcome aboard. It's great to have you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else that we need to bring up in the other column, or are we good to go?
What happened with your motion?
Oh yeah, I did make a motion that we can come up with the rest of the terms and conditions for the other three projects in the contract subcommittee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor? Contract subcommittee, I'll be coming for you soon so that we can do that. So I can get these to the city council as soon as we can. I know that in particular, this project is on a deadline and we want to start moving contracts through, right? It takes time for us to get contracts done. So I want to start this process as fast as possible. So there's the greater chance that this happens this summer like they want, right? Okay. Hey, we did good work today.
Yep, sure did.
Thank you, everybody. So our next meeting is going to be the second Wednesday in March, which is March 9th at 6 p.m. All right. So I'll see you there in Zoom land. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
A motion to adjourn.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's official. Bye, everybody.
Okay.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.